We all have our vices, don't we? A wise friend once told me, a mandatory component in adulthood is learning to moderate and manage yourself in stressful situations. How do you make God chuckle? You make a plan. And he'll never hold back. Or maybe he will if you're an atheist. You don't have control over anything, really. Sometimes not even yourself. But one thing that binds us all together in our confusion is the matter of choice. Choice. That which ties hope and perseverance to our will to keep moving. Yet no one is perfect. As if such a thing exists. But what does is simple pleasure. Simple pleasure that grounds us back down to reality to make our sour moments ever more sour, but will make the gleeful moments all the more sweeter. Sugar? Nicotine? Maybe even exercise. To each their own. My vice is YouTube. It horrifies me to think how many movies I could have watched in place of all the literal days and nights that have been embellished in this godforsaken platform. Once home to expression, now home to monetary transaction of one's dignity. But there certainly is variety, of course. There always will be, and there always should be. Many individually maybe gravitate to certain things. Many individual mediums and art forms have relished in occultic praise. We've witnessed the brightest and most innovative artists of this generation have their inception being turning on a webcam mounted on their family computer. It's a thing. It has happened before. Some start off strong, some needed time to find their own footing. Or maybe some actually hit the ground running. And some came hurtling from the hemisphere from day one, crashing into the platform, swinging their 9-inch cock in the air, proclaiming, "Robert, open wide, your personalized vice is finally here to stay." Now, before I begin sucking on Wozniak's cock for the next few minutes, I have to share a demonstrably important disclaimer to everybody watching, okay? Allow me to morph that disclaimer into a personal fact. I was exposed to the PS1 back in my childhood. I witnessed the global reckoning of the Wii. Had a one-night stand with Kinect on the 360 and had a wonderful casual relationship with the Nintendo DS. Although not a complete stranger to video games, it was never a medium that really resonated with me. And I'm actually being honest. Though memorable, my artistic thirst for emotional and mental stimuli was always dashed with film and TV. Maybe it's because I never played the right games at the age of 6 or 7. Could be. Perhaps I need more time to be indoctrinated. That could also be the case. Maybe I shouldn't have picked Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings from that garage sale instead of Xenoblade Chronicles. That also could be the fact. I will always have a respect for the video game industry, and I'm being truthful. A respect to the industry and, of course, to its universal legion of fans. It's just not a medium that I'm personally really into. And although not being in love with the art form, I consider myself a fine video game talker. I know surface level know-how on certain topics, studios, and franchises. I even serve out a couple of hot takes, if I do say so myself. A weird statement to really share with you. A weird statement consider my apathy on the industry, but not surprising, if acknowledging it being a byproduct of countless sleepless hours of consumption of this little white guy with glasses. That's right, folks. Materialism has once more caressed my gaping desire to fill the void father left in the form of my very first U2's vinyl figure. The better Funko, if you ask me. And I haven't even opened mine yet. So, yeah, guys, today in this very same episode where I'm talking about my favorite YouTuber, we're actually going to be ending the video with me opening up my very first YouTubes of the boy himself. We're just going to leave this guy over here. And of course, he's going to be part of the set eventually. Months ago, they announced this little dude, and I'd have to be in a hospital bed coughing up blood whilst Dr. Simi counts off his $4 I gave him for telling me exactly what I already know, surely validating his 9 years of medical school for less than minimum wage. But months ago, while taking off my plastic gloves, at least his plastic gloves, as I pull up my pants and I notice a $50 bill fall to the ground as he catches the bus on his way back home. And of course, the lie being, it was a paper bill with 500 pesos, because this happened in Mexico. As a hardcore physical media collector and figurine admirer, which is me, I'm used to butt-fuckingly ridiculous prices to endure in my little hobby. This actually wasn't that bad. It actually wasn't really that all expensive. And yes, allow me to share with you what the Scott the Woz series means to me before I open my first Scott the Woz figure for you as a witness. What is a revolution but slaves and followers looking for a new master? Growing up in the USA in peak YouTube operation, my pupils widened amongst the discovery of our founders. Many to mention, and all worth mentioning. And of course you got Smosh, Shane Dawson, Jenna Marbles, What the Buck, Dane Bodekeimer's work, Dax Flames, Cinemassacre, Doug Walker, so many to mention. And that's just my echo chamber talking. It was different. It was a different catalog for everybody back in the day. As so to this day, too. And you had the emergence of what I like to personally call the animated critic. The animated critic was the next evolution in criticism on media literacy, or on media itself. Gone was the stilted, eloquent way of speaking, the articles of text articulating the whys and hows of why Battlefield Earth is an abomination to humankind, and the medium of critical expression finally being normalized in a visual auditorial medium, one that not only anybody had access to, one that anyone could watch for free, but anyone also could be invited to be able to add upon that medium. YouTube. And its at the time inviting atmosphere cultivated a brand new generation of young imaginative viewers to speak their subjectivity. We were inundated of the unique media and culture that was forged from the early 2000s, for better and for worse, of course. Hot off the heels of the peak of cartoon absurdism, an army of young adults exposed to what many, including myself, consider to be the golden age of slapstick animation, presented in the form of Nicktoons, Toonami. You had even Disney Channel making a few bangers once in a while, and of course Cartoon Network in their prime. This cocktail of media influence mixed with what seemed to be freedom of digital expression created and redefined what media criticism could accomplish in this very platform. We got YouTube communities reaching out, feeding off each other. We got YouTube continuity within each singular channel. What do I mean by that? Movie reviewers began to have lore attached to them. It wasn't about just talking about a movie or a TV show or a video game. The mixture of different cultures and influences from a narrative perspective as well as an aesthetic perspective created the animated critic, which was, I'm not just going to be talking about movies and TVs, I'm actually going to develop my own kind of like slapstick format as a way to express to you why I don't like a certain movie. Water. The critics themselves, the way they were portrayed, leaned more into a caricature of a critic, with radical emotions, radical emotional extremes, most leaning to how life was ruined by the quality of Freddy Got Fingered, almost implying how he's the cause, or that was the cause of his divorce. Geely, the movie. And thus, we jumped from cynical, we'll just call it, more traditional media literacy and media criticism. We jumped from Siskel and Ebert straight into nostalgia critic, and the animated critic was born. And well, so was its imitators. Degrading as the plural may seem, it doesn't absolve itself from the truth. Many came and went, yet few lived on. And it reached far beyond film itself, and seemed to be ripe for the video game community. Scott Wozniak made his formal debut, at least as his characterized version of himself, in his Scott the Woz series on January 7th of 2017, grew to gain a massive and passionate following for his online video game community that he has cultivated. Grew to gain a massive and passionate, I already read that, with episodes tackling various subject matters, but 98% of the time being video game related. What separated him, though, from the rest of the AVG and wannabes was what many others failed to accomplish: a voice. Going back to what I was saying, not to my disdain, but indifference towards video games, I remember myself stumbling upon the game packaging episode from Scott the Woz. An episode where Scott breaks down all major video game consoles' box art templates and cases that house the games themselves. And in hindsight, it kind of makes a lot of sense. I would stumble upon that in my own recommended software, or at least in this case, algorithm. Why is that? I think I was recommended that video because I am a die-hard physical media collector for film and television. And I would drench my senses in countless DVDs unboxings, Blu-ray reviews on movies and shows that I enjoyed. And so, with a video titled Video Game Packaging, not a big shock to see YouTube assuming I'd probably be interested in what this boy with glasses had to say. And boy, did he have a lot to say, and boy, did I like it. The passion and talent Scott has when speaking on these topics is one that I haven't seen quite like him before. At least in this level. It's relentlessly humorous and sincere. I love Scott the Woz. Love him to pieces. His persona, the way his character presents himself, is through the sheer glee and enthusiasm to want to share with you what he feels about certain things, of course. The raw performance and the level of comedic timing and pitch-perfect delivery is unmatched and strikes the perfect chord with me. He's basically a live-action cartoon. His basically a live-action cartoon ripped straight out of the 90s cartoons would be used as like the perfect synonym to the kind of content he's creating. Basically, think Chowder, Ren and Stimpy, early SpongeBob, but just so happens to, really know a lot about video game consoles. Especially those that a lot of people don't really care about anymore. I can remember the actual moment Scott the Woz clicked for me. There was not a scene, not even a full joke. A fleeting moment. There was an episode of Scott the Woz that I watched after watching a couple of his own videos where I was thinking to myself, this guy's actually good. I like this guy, and I don't even care about video games. The moment I was hooked, I'll explain to you in a moment. So brief, you could literally miss it in a cough or a yawn. A 2-second long comment that altered my posture. I went from clicking on that damn thumbnail just to have something in the background while I crafted on my desk slouched over, shoulders hanging, my eyes glued to the glue I was gluing on my DIY Kelpo cereal box I was making for a friend at the time, until my eyes gazed upon the screen watching over me. Out of sheer curiosity of what the heck I clicked on, and I was greeted to the following. It was the same video game packaging episode, and there's this specific moment where he mentions that we gotta go back to where it all began, and he starts talking about an extremely old video game console called the Magnavox Odyssey, something like that. And the Magnavox Odyssey's video game cartridges were like this big, and they didn't even have really anything to distinguish each video game that it was representing. There wasn't like a paper sticker, glued on it, indicating Pong or Pac-Man or whatever. It was literally just numbers. From what I can assume, there was probably a manual included in the console somewhere indicating what corresponding numbers linked to various games, and that was how you were able to identify what cartridges were for what games. But he basically built up the reveal that the video game cartridges for the Magnavox Odyssey were just numbers, because it was like, let's go back to the Magnavox Odyssey, and it just cuts to a picture of the cartridge with the number 7 on it, and you can just hear Scott saying, "I do like 7." And when I watched that initially, I completely forgot I was crafting. I was like, oh my god. That made me laugh so hard at the time. I just kept on watching the video and actually paying attention. I honestly believe that the video game packaging episode of Scott the Woz is the perfect introductory episode for that series and for that dude. Amazing. His humor is on full display, some of the best writing he's ever done. And with that, my crafting session had concluded, and the binging began. Scott the Woz is my favorite YouTuber, because not only do I find him to be, at least in this viewer's mind, the funniest channel on YouTube, and of course, within my biases and tastes, you gotta make sure you gotta remember that too, but he made me care about video games. I know about and can carry a conversation with the subject matter because Scott knows how to educate you. This guy makes you want to pay attention. The pauses and releases to keep a dynamic flow, and the precision in the script to not marinate too much on details accentuate the more interesting aspects of the topic, mixed with the comedic flourishes, of course. Think Steve Martin mixed with Angry Video Game Nerd, fused into one guy. Dude. Now, the whole, 7, I do like 7 joke is amazing, but that's not actually my favorite joke from Scott the Woz. My favorite joke of the entire Scott the Woz pantheon is the stupidest thing you'll ever hear all week. So get ready. So I believe it was the Sonic and Knuckles episode where he was talking about the video game in question, Sonic and Knuckles. And at the time, because technology was what it was at the time, they got Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and basically split it into 2 games because of production reasons. They were like, we're going to continue this game, because it was a bigger game comparative-wise to the first 2 Sonic games, where they were like, we don't really know how we can fit this game into a cartridge. Furthermore, we're just going to release it as 2 separate cartridges under 2 different names. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, but in reality, they're 2 halves of a larger game. And the way they could allow you to potentially link the 2 games together, we didn't have DLC at the time, we barely had internet. Actually, I don't even think we had internet the same way we do now. But when I think it was Sonic and Knuckles, when Sonic and Knuckles got released, it wasn't your conventional Sega Genesis-like cartridge. It actually had a cartridge port on top that you could flap open so you could connect the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 cartridge on top of each other and then connect the whole thing into your console so you can unite and connect both games. Basically, a pseudo-practical method of going around, adding content on top of a game by literally adding it on top. From one cartridge to another cartridge, and then sliding the whole thing into your console. Basically, the early stages of DLC. And Scott, humorously and sarcastically, as he always does, he kind of like pokes fun about how innovative it was at the time, Like the idea of a cartridge having a slot to put another cartridge on top, it was like, Jesus Christ, watch it, Einstein. Screw you, Isaac Newton. I don't know. This is why we write. But there was this moment. So Scott basically just grabbed the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge, opened it, and he was like, and now we have a cartridge port on top, and you might be asking, Scott, what are you going to do? And then he grabs the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 one and he says, check it. And then connects them both, and it just cuts to him in a black abyss with a wooden sign next to him that says the future. And he's like, where am I? I love that joke so much. Dude, it's so stupid. I love it. And the best part about it, that's actually a really good joke to show somebody so they can really get a vibe for Scott the Woz, because it was hyperactively quick. It was like quick time events. It was like small, blink and you'll miss it moments. He didn't let you really think about how stupid it was. It was just like the semblance of an impression of the joke, enough for you to get the payoff of it, and then it just moves on to the next thing. Kind of like fleeting sporadic moments that makes them so effing funny. And of course, keeping with the animated critic angle, he's been so influential in his respective community of video game commentary channels, much like a trailblazer. You got crowds following in his lead. Dozens of channels, just like Scott the Woz. Even so shameless to actually copy the format of thumbnails that he uses in his videos. A lot of people do that, morphing their speech and dialect to match him. Far beyond even video games, there are other channels that are actually imitating his style, just talking about different subjects that aren't entirely video game related. Do you realize how insane that really is, man? Do you realize how many... Probably a lot comparative-wise, but comparative-wise as well, not many. Not many YouTubers are so effing influential and good at their job that a lot of people are actually imitating them so much that you can kind of consider it as its own subgenre of a subgenre on YouTube. Many people follow in his footsteps. You're looking at one of them right now. I've been so moved and inspired by him, more than I have been for a while on YouTube. Alan Becker might be the last time I saw someone just ravenously nail each and every single microscopic note in their canvases. That, and other projects I've done in the past on other channels, have been influenced by Scott's, aura. His essence is always there. He can be found in some of my older videos on other channels I've made on RCGA 1, RCGA 2. He can be found inside of me. Not literally, but sometimes when I'm talking to my friends who speak English, a reference or a joke might slip out of the Wozniak variety. He can be found on some of my other channels, not just in the algorithm, but now in my desk as well. Let's get this ready, guys. My first ever U2's collectible figurine, vinyl figure. Let me just say, by the way, I love the packaging. So it came in this. Oh, you can see, some of my lights and my camcorder there. So here it is. I love this so much. The packaging is so cute. I love. Okay, first off, hats off to you twos. I love that it comes in its own plastic, interior case, protective wise. I'm obviously just gonna display this guy like this. I'm just gonna open this, this one time. I don't really want this to get damaged. It wasn't that expensive, but Ah! All right, let's get into it. So let's try and make this somewhat satisfying, I hope. I don't want to bend it either. Somebody probably jumped. All right. The third and final flap. Awesome. Anyhow. All right. Pretty much the same. Okay. All right. Oh my god. Okay. Hold on a second. We're just gonna leave him there. So we have this slip box. Dude, you can tell it's somewhat, it is kind of like a matte finish, as much as you can have a matte finish on cardboard. It's embossed, the lettering here, and it's also glossy, as well as, the little illustration of Scott himself. It is somewhat embossed, I imagine, by the glossy, texture that they printed on it. I love this. I love that you can actually see him. They didn't have to include that, They could have just, packaged it like this. Oh my god, I love it. Dude, I love the smell of cardboard when I'm opening things like this. Hey all, Scott here. Don't mind me. I've just mastered the art of becoming a collectible U2's figure. Plastic vinyl is the new flesh. Get with the times. That's so cute. And right now, we got his famous quote, Hey all, Scott here. And this is basically, a miniaturized version of his main set on his show. It's his desk, and it's the guy himself, Scott the Woz. The box is really pretty much comparable to a Funko Pop box. Fairly, I'm very similar, basically the same kind of general packaging. It's same difference, Anyways, let's get him open up. I can't get over how good this smells. All right. So one of his most favorite, not even his favorite, one of the fan favorite quotes from Scott the Woz is, "This game blows," referring to Chibi Robo Ziplash, of course. Watch his stuff. Watch it, I promise. And whenever you open up the back package, it says, "This game blows." So cool. Ugh. All right. We got his body protector. Okay. Oh my god. Oh my god, this is so fucking cool. And we got his desk. This is so cool. Capitalism, folks. Here we are. We got Scott. on his chair, living his life in his signature pose. Hey, all, Scott here. The detail is surprisingly detailed. It's actually really, really nice. Way better than a Funko Pop, man. Like, holy shit. So we got, the Internet and You VHS. We got the Sega Genesis, all Maddens, They even included, the little crocodile floaty box that he always has hovering in the background. If you know, the Pepto-Bismol is there, so is his phone. The tambourines. So cool. And yes, it's meant to be displayed kind of like this. Yeah, pretty much like this. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Easily one of my favorite figurines I have in my entire collection. The emotional weight this figurine has on me is unmatched comparative-wise with like 90% of the stuff that I have in my room. I love it. Couldn't love it more.